You're sitting down with your sales leader and they ask you, where in the world is your deal? Let's talk about your forecasting right now. And next thing you know, you start telling them about deals and they started going deeper. So, what is the next step? I think we're going to reach out to them. Can you tell me where exactly you are? I sent some information over. I feel that they're ready. Now, if you're a sales leader, you listen to this podcast, you're going to know right out the gate, you're probably cringing. Like there's so much like feely and uncertainty in those responses. And you need to have clear outline. Now, all salespeople don't do this effectively. There's some who like just demonstrate this flawlessly. My guest today is one of those sales professionals. He was able to hit 190% of quota. And what he did to help him close that many deals is all wrapped up in this episode. And I think you're going to love it. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist Podcast. I'm your host, Donald C. Kelly, the Sales Evangelist. And I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today. My guest today is JC Pollard, and I bragged about him in a teaser there. JC, he's an account executive at Gong. If you're not familiar with Gong, we have a link down in our show notes so you can check it out. It's an amazing tool that's going to help you utilizing obviously recording those calls for your sales reps and also using AI to help you to be able to manage and coach those sellers. Now, JC does a way better job of explaining this. A couple months ago, he reached out to me and said, Donald, I would love to be a guest on the podcast. He made a list of top shows that he wanted to get on, and I made that list, and I'm grateful. Now, I got busy, and I didn't get a chance to actually get back to JC in time, but just like a great sales rep, he followed up. And then he took it to social, and he put that list out. He put check marks next to all of the shows that he got on, except for TSC. There was an X. So I reached out to JC, I commented on a post, and I was like, bro, so sorry things slept between a crack. We were able to reconnect and we were able to record the episode. And I feel that it's a great content, and it's focusing on helping you to be able to close those deals. Like, how do you get those deals across to the finish line effectively? You're going to hear some of that in this episode. You're going to hear how JC does this with his sales approach. And, obviously there's so many things that you could probably go into nuances, but the three main things that he tackles, and I'll let him bring those up. If this is your first time listening to our show, go ahead and subscribe for me. We're going to notify you every time we have a new episode so you can be up to date. You can know what to expect and so forth. And I would love for you, if you're listening to the podcast for a minute, just leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It just goes a long way because folks coming after you get to see it. They hear and see other people are liking it, and it just helps them. And as well as take this episode and share it with your team so they can benefit from it. I promise you this is one you're going to want to use on repeat. As we dive in, you get a chance to learn a little bit more about JC and how he got to this role, how long he's been in this position at Gong, and what qualifies him for the conversation we're going to have. JC, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here. Sorry that I had to outbound you and then call you out on LinkedIn, but I'm stoked we finally got this going.
Bro, that was perfect. That was like the perfect follow-up. So if you guys want to see what JC's talking about, I'm gonna put a link down in the show notes so you can go back to that LinkedIn post and take a peek at that. But he was just being a great sales rep, and
yeah.
It wasn't I didn't want JC on the show. I was pumped to have him, but I got sidetracked by all the other nuances. So it's a perfect.
It's almost like you run a tight ship and you're really busy. It's crazy.
Something like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm stoked to be here. I in that post I called out earlier this year, actually last year, I wrote down all the sales podcasts that I loved and that eventually wanted to be a guest on, and feel super grateful. But I've checked all those boxes, and this is the final one. So I'm really excited to be here. I've been listening for a long time, so feels weird being on the other end of it, but excited. Hopefully your listeners get a lot of value out of it.
I know they will, man. From our conversation, it seems like this is going to be perfect. And, for many of us, we know this podcast, our content is dedicated to two things. One, building pipe. Two, converting that pipe. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot that sales professionals, we tend to talk about, go heavy on and paint on the other side about how to, build pipe and, move the deals. But as far as closing those deals, we don't have a whole bunch of content on that at times. So I would love to take time to tackle that a little bit. Two things. I bragged about you a little bit in the teaser there. So you're at Gong, and I talked about how you made it to President Club and all the cool stuff you did with that. But tell us a little bit more. Fill in the gap for me on that. How long you've been with Gong, and what What was the success that you have accomplished at Gong so far?
Yeah. So I got an SDR role right out of college at another software company. Really liked it, had a good experience. I was about 5 months in, and my buddy who worked at Gong called me. He's like, dude, I know you have a job and I know you love it. You have to check this thing out. And I like begrudgingly agreed to go through the interview process and learned so much in the interview process alone to the point where I was like, okay, like I gotta I gotta do this for my career. And so like literally one of the parts of the interview process was a mock call and they give you feedback. I took that
Yeah.
into my existing job and booked the most meetings I ever had in a single day with that feedback. So I'm like, okay, I got to go to Gong. So I started as an SDR November 2020. Did really well as an SDR. Promoted to account executive October 2021, and then just wrapped up my first full fiscal year of selling. Closed like $1.4 million, 190% quota attainment, number one rep, President's Club. So I like to repeat that because this year has not gone off to the best start, but it's nice to reflect on what was a really good first year of selling. So
Well, that is pretty darn cool, man. Congratulations on that, and it's no small
thank you.
accomplishment. And obviously, that takes a lot of work and a lot of strategy and so forth. So, and I mean, the night is still young, man. You still got a long time, so I'm sure you're gonna do
A lot of
well at
time.
the end of the year.
Yeah.
We'll connect in Q4.
There we go.
So, but JC, you've done a lot when it comes towards pushing deals over the pipe. You know, we talk to the close. We talk and we try to emphasize to our team and to the clients that we have that we want a 3 to 5x our pipeline.
Hmm.
But sometimes people just have things there that just linger. The problem is if you don't know, don't know where your deals are, you don't know how to quite get them to that end without relying upon luck and so forth. It could be a problem. But I want to hear about
Yeah.
you, man. What are some of go back to your side? What are some of the problems you see with sales reps when it comes to not being able to close effectively?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm excited to talk about stuff that happens on the second part of the process, which is closing pipeline. But just want to say, like, you can't close it if you don't have it. So building pipeline obviously is always top of mind. But once you do have something in the pipeline, I think one of the problems I see is so many times you'll hear in a forecast meeting, a rep like doesn't know where their deal actually is. And that's so alarming to me if like you don't really know the risk in your own deal. You don't really know how real your own deal is. And I think that can
Go
be,
deeper on that for a second. Like, not give me an example so frame it out for some folks who are listening. They're like, I think I know where my deal is at. Like,
yeah, well, the classic like forecast meeting where a rep's asking you about, or sorry, a manager's asking reps about their deal. Like, hey, where's the risk in this deal? Why are they looking at us? All those things. So many times I hear like, I don't know, I think we're going to reconnect, or it feels like we're in a good spot, but like there's a lot of hunch behind that. Not so much internally at Gong. We run a really tight process, but I've run a lot of pilots for other companies where we plug in Gong and like I get a glimpse into their world. And this is such a prevalent problem where everyone's kind of operating in the dark. And one of the problems is reps literally don't know where their deals are because they haven't asked, they haven't done the adequate things they need to in order to get ahead of risk and suss out, how true, how real that pipeline is.
mm, man, this is gonna be a fun episode. So clearly, this you've done some things to fix that, and I want to just if you could take a second and tell us when we did our pre-call, you shared 3 things that we could probably help sellers understand
Mm-hmm.
to be able to know where the deals are and to close effectively. What are those 3 things? Tell us what they are, and then we'll come back and double back on each of them and go down a little deeper.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone has heard the old adage like time kills deals. And so my thought process is always like, we got to get these things through the process, through the cycle as fast as we can. So the first thing I want to talk about is setting expectations and proactively outlining the fact like we can get this deal done. The second thing I want to talk about is what I call soft closes, but essentially like miniature trial closes throughout the entire process, where you are essentially asking to wrap the deal up before you've really checked all the right boxes, but there's kind of some tactics and strategy behind why you do that. And the third thing, which is only really applicable to companies that have some kind of like proof of concept or pilot or trial process, but the opportunity to close deals without that process, or once you enter a pilot or proof of concept, opportunity to wrap deals up faster before like the actual pilot is set to close. So excited to dive into those three.
Yeah, let's go with the first part. Proactivity for 500.
Yeah, I think what, if I'm taking a step back here, the goal of this is to recognize that we have sold our software over and over and over again. Well, hopefully, if you're good at your job, you've sold it a lot of times. You've definitely tried to sell it a lot of times. But it's important to keep in mind that your buyer has probably never purchased your software before.
Hmm.
So it's on you to establish what the process should look like. And one of the ways you do that is being really proactive and prescriptive in outlining what are the next steps. So a quick example of what this would sound like is we're hopping on a first call together, Donald, and you've expressed some interest, or maybe I outbounded you. In my agenda, I can outline the fact that we can get a deal done real quick. Like, hey, Donald, there's a couple different outcomes of this call. The first is I show you my product, and you're like, oh my God, we needed this yesterday. In that case, we can talk about a pricing contract and ultimately get this in your hands really quickly. And then you'll outline the other outcomes of the call, which are more likely like a more in-depth demo or a pilot, et cetera. But what you're doing is that you're planting seeds in your prospect's head early and often that we can close this quickly. Like we don't have to go through this lengthy process. There's a very real and direct path to a partnership here, should that be what you're interested in.
And what I like about that too, JC, is I've seen that many times, and I think what happened to me when I was quota carrying, and even when I sell sometimes right now, I assume too much, and I had to teach myself not to assume that much. Like I assume you're dealing with a CRO or a VP of sale. They understand when it comes to purchasing, sales education, or putting their folks through one of our cohorts or whatnot. They know the process, but in actuality is like, yeah, they're buying a lot of stuff, but they're not buying my stuff on a day-to-day basis or even working
Right.
with my company on a day-to-day basis. So it behooves me to go back to the basics as much as possible. And it's not insulting them, but it's just a simple fact that you're being thorough, if that makes sense. And I really love that.
Yeah, and I think it's actually customer centric to do it because
Hmm.
you're guiding them throughout the process. You're being prescriptive and you're helping them evaluate your software in the way that you know it's best. So
Can you give me an
yeah.
example how you've used this with Gong or how you've used this in your process?
Yeah, I mean, we're really diligent about setting an upfront contract in every call and then
Love it.
referencing back to that upfront contract. I think that a lot of companies position that, but I think a lot of people only think about it on the first call, which is like your discovery call where you position the outcomes. You should be doing that on every call. So if you're in your third demo and there's been interest and you're positioning to pilot, like set that upfront contract early. Like, hey, we've had a few conversations. It feels like things are really progressing in the right direction. There's a few ways this call could end up. The first is we give you a level of confidence through another demo that you're just ready to buy Gong and want to forego the pilot process. The other option is you're super excited, but you want to validate this in your own world, in which case we can definitely talk through what a pilot would look like. Does that sound like a fair two outcomes?
Mm.
And then at the end of the call, you reference back to that. You're like, hey, beginning of the call, I kind of outlined there are two routes we can go. To me, it sounds like we're leaning towards like a one, but I'm really curious from your perspective, where would you say we fall on that spectrum? But because you're planting those seeds early, it's like giving your customer a few outcomes that they can choose from rather than like, hey, where do you want to take it from here? What do next steps look like? And you're like prescribing the process and you're setting the foundation early that we can get this deal done, we can pilot, here are the options, here's how we run a really tight process.
Love this. All right. So we're being proactive. We're helping to set the playing field so that they can know what to expect. Let's go into the
Mm-hmm.
next one. Now that we've helped set this, probably our next meeting or whatnot. You talk about being throughout the whole process. You look for ways to have these trial closes or the micro commitments, what we call them internally here.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I call them soft closes, and what it looks
Soft
like
closes.
is, I mean, it's the classic like Alec Baldwin, like always be closing thing. But I think it's actually really impactful, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Like the problem is so many reps don't know where they are in their deals, and a lot of that is because like we wait until the end of this process to ask, "Hey, are you ready to buy?" Like we make it this big event that's kind of looming in the background. What I try to do when I'm at the top of my game, like really in the groove, I'm doing this in all my deals, is throughout the deal, I'm asking to just wrap the deal up and close it. Keep in mind, 90% of the time, I know full well they're not going to say, yeah, we're ready to sign. But there's really two goals here. The first one is if they do happen to say, like, yeah, we are ready to go, you just save yourself maybe weeks of the process that you can shave off. You can get a deal done, get it over to the post sale team, and you essentially got the same amount of quota retirement, and you saved yourself 3 weeks. We all know time is our biggest asset. And the second thing it does is it allows them to say no, which gives you permission to do discovery. That's really where this comes in handy. Like, hey, Donald, from my perspective, it seems like every single box you were hoping to check, we've checked. I'm curious, can we just get this thing done this week? You say no. Seriously, you say no, that opens the door for me. I'm like, got it, understood. Maybe it was a bit aggressive of an ask. I'm curious though, like, what else do we need to do to make that a yes? But hearing no gives you the ability to do that deeper level of discovery. And then you can start to discover, hey, if you did say yes, what would the actual paper process look like? Like, it just opens the door for you to have very candid conversations around what the rest of the buying process looks like, or if they're even bought in. Like, maybe they're like, hey, we just don't see the value yet, in which case you discover that early and you maybe have to go back to the drawing board, but at least you know.
And you know what? That goes back to the first point, the problem. You're reiterating this again, like how sometimes people just don't know where the deals are at. The first call may have gone really well and everybody got excited. Second call, they probably looked at competitors and maybe they're
Right.
they're checked out already. But by you doing this, it at least gives that that midterm, so to speak, that temperature check
Yeah.
to say, yeah, bro, we're way off track, and we need to right the ship, as opposed to leading with your assumptions and getting to the
Right.
point where this deal is supposed to, it's forecasted at 80% when it's really at 40.
I
And that
lost
could
a
be
deal
that
last week because I failed to do what I'm telling everyone to do right now.
story time.
I
Story time. You don't have to give
Yeah,
names,
no, it
but let's go.
like I thought I was running a really tight process, and well, it's not lost. They're going to go check out a
What made you
competitor,
thought? What
and
made you thought you're running a type process? What were you doing that you said, "Man, I'm doing so good"? Give us a
yeah.
breakdown
So
of
it's
that.
interesting. I mentioned like last year was a banner year, and so I had so much pipeline. I was already well above my number consistently. I had deals, so I had no fear in any deal of
Yeah,
asking the hard questions of de-risking, because I'm like, if I lose it, who cares? Like, I've got 7 more in the hopper. This year, when things are off to a slower start due to macro reasons, due to a new book, new segment, all this stuff, and every deal matters more, I honestly think
yeah.
I let fear kind of creep back in. I'm like, I don't really want to know where I'm at in this deal, because what if it's bad? And so I waited until the end, and we ran a pilot. Great adoption, really good insights. But I did exactly what I told everyone not to do. I waited until the very end. I'm like, hey, are we ready to go? And they're like, well, it went really well, but part of our our procurement process is we have to try a competitor. Like, they literally have to pilot a competitor. And I didn't ask that over the whole 3 week like deal cycle. But it's just an example of, if I had asked 2 weeks ago, I'm like, hey, I feel like we're in a really good spot. Can we get this thing done? They would have probably told me like, hey, it's going well, but we're gonna have to do this. And then I could have gotten ahead of that. So just another example of like, this stuff's important. It really helps you get ahead of risk.
Dang. I mean, this is so many. It's so good on so many level with this. Where I feel I feel your pain for that. It's kind of like going with the head in the sand idea. It's like, man, this is.
Yeah.
I really don't want to know if I'm sick, so I'm not going to the doctor. but
Yes.
I should. But I did a blood work 10 years ago.
Right.
But
Right.
you need to do it. And a lot could be revealed from that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Ignorance is not bliss in sales. Ignorance is far from bliss in sales. You don't want any ignorance. You want to know everything. And so, yeah.
Ignorance won't let your pipeline be blessed.
Yeah.
Talk about, how do you bring this up though? I mean, and you gave an example there. Are there different
Yeah.
strategies of how you bring it up, or is it just like you feel it out? I mean, we have folks who probably listening to this or newer. Maybe give us a quick example. Give a role play with me of what that might sound like.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can incorporate it in a lot of different parts of the process. And there's a few different ways it sounds like. The first is the one I just identified, where I'm like, hey, can I make an observation? You get permission. Sure. I'm like,
Sure.
when we first started talking, you mentioned you wanted to solve for these 3 things. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, totally.
Over the past couple of demos, we've showed you how you can check those 3 things box. I'm like, how confident are you, scale of 1 to 10, that Gong can solve those challenges?
I think you guys are hitting at a good 8 right now, 8.5.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, there's different ways we could take this deal, but given that level of confidence, given everything we talked about, to me, it feels like it makes sense to talk about what an official partnership could look like so we can get you up and running, introduced to the post sale team. Is that premature? Are we like ready to go here?
I think we could. I just have this one issue that I think probably if you can address that, maybe it'll be good to go.
See, and there you go. Now I'm doing disco. What's that
Perfect.
one issue? Another thing this sounds like is I know a lot of companies lead with a pilot or position a trial. It's like, hey Donald, real quick, before we continue, can I outline kind of the two different ways that customers typically evaluate our software?
Yeah. What are those two ways?
First way is you're super bullish on this software and you're really confident that it can solve the problems. In which case, it makes sense to just talk about commercials, get something done so we can get you fully plugged in. And typically, when people go that route, there might be like some financial incentive because it saves a lot of time. The second
Sure.
option is you're a little bit on the fence, you see the value, but you want to confirm, in which case we could go through a proof of concept, and I'm happy to talk about what that looks like. Of the two, is there a certain way you typically evaluate software?
Usually I just like to go jump into it. So worst case, if we can't progress, then so be it. But I'd rather just get started instead of wasting time.
Yeah. But see, like I love positioning it that way where it's like, hey, typically these are two things people look at. It makes them feel like, oh, I'm just going through the normal motions. This is how
Yeah.
everyone looks at it. And you'd be like, I've definitely closed 4 or 5 deals that I was anticipating a pilot with the whole time. And they're like, no, yeah, I think we've seen everything we need to see. Obviously, most of the time they're like, no.
Yeah.
But if you ask, like, if you shave 3 weeks off of one deal cycle once a year and you can use that time
Bro,
allocated elsewhere, it's huge.
that's I can start over in the process and get some more deals in a pipeline at
Yeah.
that point, right? And that's how I can. I'm sure that's how you got up to 190% of the your quota. So
So there's a million ways that it can tactically sound like.
okay.
I think the important thing is don't wait till the end. Like you can be trial closing throughout the entire process and feel it
So and
out.
what?
Because if somebody feels really excited, if they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy!" Like crazy enough. I have somebody named our VP of Sales, Jameson, one of the best sellers I've ever seen. But he'll literally directly ask when people react like that. They're like, "Oh my god, this is awesome!" He's like, "Awesome enough to buy it right now." Like you just ask these direct questions, but it works and you de-risk and yeah. So couldn't recommend it more, and I need to get back to being more disciplined about doing it.
Yeah, if it's that good, might as well, right?
Right.
um, the last thing I want to talk about is go back to the trials and those those demos. I worked at a company where we did that, where we did some kind of like a trial
Yeah.
period, or they had different stage, different phrases that they might call in different organizations. But I
Yeah.
always felt that I needed to go all the way through with that 30
Right.
day period before we can readdress the problem or come back in and see if they're making sense. But you have you came with a opposite thought of that. Talk to us about that and how
Yeah.
you do this effectively.
Yeah. I think it's just like what I was talking about earlier. There's opportunities closed throughout the cycle that maybe don't follow like the set timeline.
Hmm.
I want to take a step back though, and what's critical here and what enables you to do this is for companies that do have a trial, a proof of concept, you have to have what's called like mutual success criteria with your prospect. You should never launch any kind of trial or pilot without knowing explicitly like what do you need to see over the course of the X amount of days that's going to get you to buy. Like
Hmm.
you need to be singularly aligned on what they need to see. So you're not like, man, we ran a really great pilot. I'll give a Gong example. Like we found risk in 37 deals over the course of the pilot, but all they were focused on is call coaching, and we didn't like touch on that. Then we missed. So you need to know exactly what your prospect is looking to accomplish. And when you do, let's say a typical pilot is 45 days. You're 14 days in, and you're like, man, we've checked every single box in the success criteria. Try to close the deal. And you can make it sound really like advantageous for your customer too. It's not as self-serving, but like, hey, 14 days ago, we aligned on these 5 things. With the idea being, if we check these boxes, this was a really successful pilot. I know we initially talked about a 45-day period, but I feel like we've checked all these boxes. does it make sense to just get this thing done and get you introduced to your post sale team so we can really fully bake this thing out? Like there's like a little carrot for them, right? Get them introduced. So you don't have to wait the whole pilot. If you feel like things are going really well, if you check the right boxes, like wrap that thing up early.
Yeah.
So
Has that ever backfired at all for you?
yeah,
Anyone ever
it's
got
backfired
upset?
in the sense that people are like no, like we're not ready. And I'm like, why? Like what do we need to do? So it's again, it's spot checking and like I think that something I did really poorly when I first got promoted to an AE. And if you ask me like the biggest thing I learned in my first year of selling, it's like friction is really good in deals. Like you don't have to be liked throughout the whole process. You want friction so
Yeah.
that you really understand what's going out. And so when you ask those hard questions and those kind of annoying questions, you can create friction and then actually understand where your deal is at. So yeah,
Yeah, and I think the more mature someone is in their sales career, the better they understand that concept, right?
yeah,
Because I feel the more the younger sellers, oftentimes they may feel that that's a bad thing. Like you're
yeah,
having, nobody they feel the prospect's gonna get mad at them. But again, I'm a
right,
consultant and I've done this many times. I know what those issues are, so therefore I am asking the questions. And if they may be a tough questions, then the prospect maybe need to check their pride, but it's a tough question to help you to solve a real problem. You know what I mean? And and the reason why I asked that because it's not like anybody ever got upset at you from saying it. They more so you explain it led to friction conversation where now
yeah,
you're able to have a real conversation around an issue or have some kind of tension, but that's a good thing. It's not like I can't believe you said that, JC. I am not looking at Gong anymore.
right. Right. I think people
Yeah.
appreciate like equal business stature, especially when you're selling like the C suite. Like there's a little bit of admiration when you're direct. You're like, why
Yeah.
aren't we getting this done? So
Yeah. You
easier
know,
said
those
than
are
done
like
though. Like my first, I would say 4 months, 5 months as an AE, I did not do any of this because I like I love my prospects. I like really care about being liked. I want to be friendly. And then I saw a stat from Keenan who wrote Gap Selling. It said like I don't
yeah.
even know if it's a legit stat or like something throughout, but it's like 99% of top performers don't care about being liked. And I was like, man,
It is.
I could try to like shove myself into the 1%, but I think I would rather aim for the 99%, which is like a very big much bigger opportunity. So that's when I kind of intentionally let go of the fear of pissing people off or making people angry and just being more direct.
And I think the challenger sale kind of goes into that notion where it, and I think I would say the other side to that too, where it's not so much. I think challengers and those who are top performers tend to be more liked per se because of that directness, and also
Yeah,
because of the genuineness behind it, rather than
right.
just be running around touchy feely type stuff. Hey, I just want to see how you're doing, and I saw that your dog had puppies. Is that like? I mean, you could bring that up and you could talk about that, but that's not the. You need to be willing to have those difficult
Yeah,
conversations because that's what I am hiring you as a consultant slash salesperson to do, rather than
yeah,
to check up on my personal life only.
yeah.
So
I've read Challenger Sale, and I think the real weapon of it, like if the best salespeople are ones that are liked and are friendly and create rapport, and then can drop the hammer when they need to and challenge a prospect and ask
because you're
direct questions.
respected, right?
Yes, that's what I
Yeah,
try to be. Is like I'm like I get close with my prospects. Like I truly care about making friends with them. I keep in touch with a lot of people that I've sold Gong to like a year ago. But like when they say something throughout the cycle where I'm like, you're not thinking about it the right way, like I'm not afraid to also call that out. Like, hey, can I challenge you on that? Like you can
yeah,
marry the two. I think that's where you start to really see some success.
yeah. Oh man, good stuff, man. JC, if there's one major tip you want somebody to leave this episode with, I mean, I got several here, but one major piece of advice you want them to leave with, what's that one major advice that's going to help them climb the leader ladder and increase their close rate?
Yeah, I think to distill it all, it's just proactively seek risk in all of your deals. Look
Yeah,
for it. Ask questions that will pull it out. You want to know the risk. You don't want to find out at the end. So go out of your way to find it.
love it. Listen, man, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today, man. If folks want to get in touch with you to learn about what you're doing, and also, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to brag about Gong for a second here. So, give us a pitch, so to speak. Tell us about Gong. Maybe some
Yeah,
sales leaders and sales rep want to check it out.
I'll start with the Gong pitch. If you are a sales leader that is leading a team of sellers and you're not sitting in one office surrounded by all of them, I genuinely don't think you can responsibly run a revenue organization without Gong or something similar. What we do is we capture and analyze every single customer facing interaction and then use AI that deeply understands what's happening in those so that you, managing a team of sellers spread across the country or not in an office, you know what's happening in every deal on every call, and you can proactively get ahead of a lot of the risk we talked about today. Things like, have we asked who the ultimate signer is? All that kind of stuff can be alerted to you proactively. And then from a rep vantage point, it's like game film. It's your ability to improve your own process, learn from top performers. It's the coolest software I think in the world. So check it out for sure. Yeah.
And if
A
we
little
do want to
biased,
connect
but
with you,
seriously, I love it.
it's pretty dope. It's pretty good software. So we're gonna make sure you guys can check that out. How do we find out more about Gong or connect with you?
Yeah, just follow me on LinkedIn or message me on LinkedIn. I don't really have like a website or anything yet. So actually, I don't know why I said yet. I'm not going to have a website. You can just add me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Everything's on LinkedIn, man. Well, go ahead and connect with JC. JC, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah. Nice chatting with you. Talk soon.
Anytime. Hey, that was JC Pollard. If you want to connect with him, go ahead and connect with him on LinkedIn. I want to also mention something as well. JC is he's a big advocate for helping folks. Sometimes there are people out there who find themselves in trouble, whether it's like emotional challenges or they need a little bit of support. He has a nonprofit line, what products that he has. It's called Heads Down Hoodies, Time to Build. And all of the proceeds go to an American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. We have a link to that in the show notes so you can get access to it. It means some pretty cool merch here. You can see it, some nice hoodies and sweatshirts and coffee mugs and notebook and hats and whatnot. But it's something that he decides to do to give back. And I feel that you can find value in that and help folks out. So many Americans, so many people around the world suffer from different challenges and sometimes feel that it's they have no other way out. Obviously, we know we have friends and families who care for us, and maybe you could be that person to help. The National Suicide Prevention does a lot, and with different programs and advocacy, and I feel that this would be a great thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link down in the show notes. If you want to go ahead and support JC in that cause, go ahead and click on it. Connect with him on LinkedIn. Tell him that you heard him here on the Sales Evangelist podcast, and tell him that he did an awesome follow-up with me. As always, our show is dedicated to helping you, 1, build pipeline, and 2, convert pipeline. If you are looking for a training program that can help you or coaching or guidance, go ahead and let us know, and we'd love to connect with you as well. But as always, raise your level of thinking, go out and do big things. Thanks so much for watching.